glad you could join us today. This is our Sunday morning Center for Mindful Living / Insight Meditation Community of Washington class that we've had for going back a couple of decades now. And I'm Hugh Byrne. I'm one of the teachers of the class, of the Sunday class, and with IMCW since 2003, and with the Center for Mindful Living since we started it back about a dozen years ago. And so if there's any confusion about IMCW and the Center for Mindful Living, it's understandable because it's easy to get them confused, but CML is part of IMCW, but it's very much has its own rhythm and dynamic and community, but under the umbrella of the Insight Meditation Community, and has a lot of activities every day of the week: meditations, classes, community-led, Sangha-led groups, wonderful, warm, welcoming community. And I want to maybe just begin by just wanting everyone to feel welcome here, particularly at a time of some significant division in our country and in the world. Whatever, whoever you are, I hope you will feel welcome here. Whatever your beliefs are about things, including that, as well as all of the other unique things, aspects of ourselves that we bring. So welcome to everyone. So just a word about the format of the class. We normally begin just some words of welcome, and we begin with a meditation, 20 minutes or so, helping us arrive and settle and kind of open to whatever is arising in the body and the heart and the mind, with some instructions and some periods of silence in that. Then we'll have, today I think we'll have some movement, and then if that works, we'll have it after the meditation, and then we'll go into the talk for today, which the theme is the Bodhisattva's path. That is the path of somebody who is committed to compassion towards all beings, however, whoever they are and whoever we are, and inclusive wish to alleviate the suffering of the world, and how that path may be of some help to us as we deal with all that's arising. Right now, I know for many it's a very challenging time, dealing with what's going on in the country, particularly post November 5th, and in the world more generally, when conflicts going on and climate change and everything that that's going on around us. So, the question of how these teachings and practices of the Dharma, we use that word Dharma to speak of the full range of the Buddha's teachings of wisdom and compassion, and also other wisdom teachings that point to the same possibilities of freedom, how the Dharma can support us in these times, in these difficult times that we're living in right now. And for me, that's kind of like almost the number one question. How do we deal with everything that's arising in our own bodies, hearts, and minds, and in the culture, in the society around us? So we'll have a talk. I'll do a talk on that, maybe 30 minutes or so, and hopefully we'll have some time at the end for some sharing, and also invite you, if you'd like to share at any time maybe not so much during the meditation, but share any time during the class in the chat if you have things that are coming up for you, or just want to maybe invite you to share how you're feeling about different things going on. So, and then we'll finish with some announcements. So, with that, let's just settle into a meditation. To begin, just find a comfortable, relaxed posture. Sitting in a way where your back is straight, shoulders relaxed, inviting the shoulders to relax. You might let your hands rest comfortably in your lap or on your knees or on your thighs. And if you're comfortable, you could let your eyes gently close, let your attention come down, drop down out of the thinking mode where we spend, a lot of our time. Just come down into the body. Feel the body. Feel the weight of the body on the buttocks and the thighs. Contact of your feet with the floor. The sensations of breathing in and breathing out. And let yourself arrive and open to whatever is present for you right now. Just be aware. Whatever bodily feelings, whatever mood or emotions might be present right now. Just allow what's here to be here. And there's a way of just settling, relaxing the body and the mind. You could take a few longer, deeper breaths. Just a nice, full, deep in breath, filling the chest, filling the lungs. And then a long, slow out breath, releasing, letting go. Breathing in, calming the body. Breathing out, calming the mind. Just letting your breath, the deeper breathing, help you settle and arrive as fully as you can, just being here. You can leave to one side things that maybe are in the future, the plans you have, things to do. Just let them be on one side. Let the past be behind you, over on the other side. Just allow yourself to be here with what's present for you right now. Making space for whatever is here. Just letting the breath settle into its natural rhythm whenever it's comfortable. And opening to what's present. This moment, this experience, just as it is. As the poet Dorothy Hunt says, peace is this moment without judgment. this moment in the heart space where everything that is welcome. Peace is this moment without judgment. This moment in the heart space where everything that is welcome. It can be helpful at the beginning of a meditation to gladden the mind. That's a term the Buddha used to bring some joy, gladness into the mind and the heart. One way we can do this is to just reflect on a few things in our lives that we're grateful for. It might be loved ones, the gifts of the natural world, our practice, teachings, our health, whatever it might be for you. Just allow yourself to take in a feeling of appreciation, gratitude for what you've been given. Reflecting on gratitude helps us to step out of the kind of the mode where we get fixated on what's wrong or what we wish were different, to come into appreciation for all that we have that easily we take for granted. And if you feel inclined, you might just invite a smile or a half smile to your face, just activating the muscles around the eyes and the mouth. Maybe thinking of someone who's easy to feel happy when you think about them, joyful, loving. Gladdening the heart and the mind. Our practice is really to say yes to what is. So whatever's present for you right now in the body, emotions, thoughts, moods or mind states, whatever's here, see if you can make space for it. If there's some sadness or grief, maybe a feeling around the heart or the eyes, see if you can just allow yourself to feel that energy moving through you without resisting or pushing away. See if you can breathe into whatever is present right now. meeting what is here with acceptance and with kindness. And it can be helpful to have a focus for our attention. Very easily, the mind can have a mind of its own, kind of go off, and without being aware of it, we're thinking about tomorrow or next week or our vacation or what happened yesterday. And not a problem with that, but just having a way to ground our attention. And we can rest our awareness on our breathing. This is an anchor for our attention, kind of grounding us here in this moment. Breathing in, breathing out. Breathing in, know that you're breathing in. Breathing out, know that you're breathing out. And as you breathe in and breathe out, you may be aware of sounds, feelings, emotions, just coming and going. Let them come and go in their own time, just with the breath at the center, just grounding us here in this moment, in this changing flow of experience. And whenever you notice that your attention is moved into thinking about things going on elsewhere, future, past, memories, daydreams, just kindly, gently choose to bring the attention back. Nothing wrong with thinking, no problem with it. We're just choosing to be here rather than lost in thought somewhere else. Just to come back here. This breath, this feeling, this moment. making space for whatever is present for you. Welcoming the guests in Rumi's phrase. Whatever's here, can we allow it to be here, to come, to go in its own time? So if there's a strong, let's say a wave of emotion comes, we can choose to just let go of the breath and allow ourselves to open fully to what's here. You know, if it's sadness or grief, really open to the sensations in the body. Breathe into them, make space for them, allow them to come and to go in their own time. So not resisting, pushing away, avoiding, but also not getting caught up in a story around what's happening or what we're feeling. Just staying close to the feelings, coming, staying for a while, and then passing. And once the wave passes, we can just come back again, just resting in the breath, in breath and out breath. We'll finish the meditation with this poem by Rainer Maria Rilke called The Man Watching. I can tell by the way the trees beat after so many dull days on my worried window panes that a storm is coming. And I hear the far-off fields say things I can't bear without a friend. I can't love without a sister. The storm, the shifter of shapes, drives on across the woods and across time. And the world looks as if it had no age. The landscape, like a line in the psalm book, is seriousness and weight and eternity. What we choose to fight is so tiny. What fights us is so great. If only we would let ourselves be dominated, as things do, by some immense storm, we would become strong too and not need names. When we win, it's with small things, and the triumph itself makes us small. What is extraordinary and eternal does not want to be bent by us. I mean the angel who appeared to the wrestlers of the Old Testament. When the wrestler's sinews grew long like metal strings, he felt them under his fingers like chords of deep music. Whoever was beaten by this angel, who often simply declined the fight, went away proud and strengthened and great from that harsh hand that kneaded him as if to change his shape. Winning does not tempt that man. This is how he grows, by being defeated decisively by constantly greater beings. Take your time coming back, opening your eyes. Um, welcome to anyone who joined us during the meditation, and welcome everyone. Emily's going to lead us in a few movements, get into the body, and then we'll go into the talk after that. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you so much, Hugh. Wow, drinking in all of the teachings. Just sway. Allow your body to move, to be with all of the thoughts that we've just had. Our internal being expressing itself outwardly through the body in a gentle sway from side to side. And then open up, wide, expanding, lifting the chest, feeling your feet firmly on the ground. Lift your arms up as much as it's comfortable for you. Exhale, soften your elbows, dropping the shoulders down, coming into cactus pose. Then drop the hands, holding up the elbows. Inhale, rising up. Exhale, down. Inhale, rise. Extend the arms up, and then grasp your left wrist in your right hand and extend over. Tilt gently over to the right. Your head next to your left arm, allowing the extension. Inhale into the left side of the ribs. Exhale, soften. Soften that right elbow. Inhale up. Switch wrists and extend over to the left. Breathing into the right rib cage, dropping down that left elbow. Softening, even pressing on your left foot to keep your balance here. Inhale up. Reach up, exhale, float the arms down, roll your shoulders. Roll them the other way. And come to center. Notice where your hips meet your legs. We're moving into a very deliberate forward bend. So feet are a little wider than hip distance. Forward fold just at the hip crease, straight spine, head in line with the spine. Breathing in, extend your spine longer out. Just staying here. Notice the outside edges of your feet, fully engaging your feet. Now drop your head down, lengthening your neck. Bringing your hands lower to above your knees. This may be where you wish to stay in a comfortable lengthening of the spine. Or you could drop down further, dropping your chin, lengthening towards the floor. You could keep your hands on your legs or just drift, hanging like a rag doll, nodding your head from side to side, just to see that you're releasing and lengthening your neck, your spine. pressing on your feet, keeping that alignment, that energy. And then draw your hands back above your knees, tuck your tailbone under, lifting up. Draw your shoulders around your ears. Exhale down, dropping down. Holding here, notice. Open your eyes, notice your horizon. And then bring your arms up one more time. Hands above your head, centering. Draw your hands to your heart. Turn them out to the group, greeting everyone here, acknowledging our connections, our love of the teachings, and then down to the earth, appreciating what it gives us, what it receives from us. And then we're going to exhale up. So whoosh, palms together above your head, dropping down to point to the earth, and whoosh, once more to the heart. Take a bow. Thank you for your practice.
Thank you so much, Emily. Thank you. It feels really good to get into the body. I was in a car yesterday for 8 hours, so I could definitely use it. So thanks so much. Good to have you back and leading the movement, Emily. And yeah. So the theme of today, of the talk today, is probably about, I don't know, a lot of talks. Maybe it's an initial one of a lot, because it's about the whole time that we're living in right now, and the challenges that we face, and how we respond wisely, kindly, courageously to what is going on, both our own experiences, what's coming up, whether it's our fears, our grief, our whatever it is, joy, whatever emotions and mind states are coming up in our individual lives, but also how we're engaging collectively with the challenges that we face in the country and in the world right now. And the central question, really, from a standpoint of, the Dharma and this particular class, and classes like this, is really how can the teachings and practices support us, both individually and collectively, in terms of enhancing freedom, compassion, wise responses to what's going on for ourselves and for our larger society and world. How can the teachings support us? And I'm definitely, in terms of my own practice, my own experience, my own life, coming from a place where I think these teachings and practices are really priceless, that they can provide extraordinary benefits to us as we engage with the challenges of the time we're living in. And what I'll be addressing to some extent today, the kind of the changes that are coming up or already happening and will be happening more and more over these coming years, coming out of the November 5th election. But my intention is very much to come at this not from a political perspective or a partisan perspective, but from a Dharma perspective, from the standpoint of the teachings and practices. Doesn't mean I don't have views, and I apologize if if I'm less than skillful at times, but I'm certainly my whole intention is to come from the standpoint of what is wise, what is compassionate, what do how do we how do the teachings best support us? And I guess I just start from a place of recognition of where we are right now by saying that from a Dharma standpoint, we're living in a time of the word that's often used is ignorance, but I don't mean to use that in too pejorative a way, but in a time of confusion where we have these enormous possibilities of living together in a compassionate and wise way, and yet and that is happening in a million ways, just going from place to place, going to the store, all these things. There are millions of acts of kindness that we experience and hopefully we practice as well. But in terms of our larger ways of living together, our collective ways of living together, politically, socially, the larger kind of cultural, political, social world, how we organize ourselves, falls immensely short of what our potential is, I think, from a Dharma standpoint, and I'm talking about not just this particular conjuncture, this particular moment that we're living in right now, but any time within the recent decades, and obviously going back further, that would be the case, going back 100 years or 200 years. So I'm kind of recognizing this as a reality, that not just the Buddha's teachings, but other spiritual teachings, point to the possibilities of us living together in a different way. And I know probably most of us, or maybe all of us, feel that there's much greater possibilities than we're actually living out in our culture, in our world right now. The expressions of not seeing things clearly, come out with the divisions, with the wars, with racism, homophobia, misogyny, all of the other expressions, not just of individual people engaging in relationships that are unwise and unskillful, but how those are kind of embedded really in our culture. So that's kind of the reality that we're dealing with, that we have tremendous potential, and I believe that these teachings and practices can play a really profound role in helping us to live together more wisely and more compassionately, more kindly together. And also just to acknowledge that we're living in a particularly challenging time. I mean, at least for many of us feel this, that following November 5th and what we've seen since then, there's a lot of, I feel a great deal of concern about the future of, the likelihood of greater divisions, greater conflict, setting people against each other, more chaos, and more suffering coming out of the outcome of the November 5th election. I want to put it in context and say that we don't know anything about the future. And insofar as we proliferate and worry and catastrophize about what might happen, what could happen, we create the conditions for suffering. So it doesn't serve us to kind of, oh, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, all of that, because we just don't know. So these teachings and practices kind of encourage us, invite us to just what am I aware of right now in this moment? So when we go off into scenarios of, oh, this is going to be terrible, this is what, just come back, be with the fears, open to the fears rather than letting the fears become the driving force of our experience. It serves us to have a don't know mind, a beginner's mind, where we really don't know the future. We can't know the future. And so there's a power, of Eckhart Tolle, speaks about the power of now, and so many other teachings of just being present with what is right now. And at the same time, we have been told very clearly about what to expect in the time ahead. And it behooves us to prepare as much as we can for what we can prepare for. If we knew that there was a tsunami coming or likely to come because there's been an earthquake, it would be foolish just to sit around and say, oh, I'm just going to be with what is. Obviously, we're being with what is, but we also have to prepare. If there was an asteroid heading for the Earth, we'd obviously want to see what can we do about it to prevent, great suffering. So we're also kind of seeing things on the horizon that are deeply, I think for me, certainly deeply concerning. And so how do the teachings and the practices that we explore together here and in similar places, how can they support us in responding and engaging wisely, kindly, courageously to the challenges we face? And what I want to explore today is particularly is an archetype in the Buddhist tradition, the archetype of the Bodhisattva, as an inspiration and as a way of embodying wisdom and compassion, taking on the path of the Bodhisattva. I'll be inviting us to at least consider that archetype of the Bodhisattva as a way of helping us engage with all that's coming up for us right now, because we've got some difficult times ahead. I think all of us would probably, I don't say all of us, but probably many of us would acknowledge that the times ahead look particularly difficult, not just difficult within the context that's been there for, with climate change and with the divisions in our culture and the society, but particularly, what's been promised. If we were living in 1930, with the Al Capone and those people around, and President whoever it was, Hoover or Roosevelt, appointed Al Capone to head the FBI, we'd probably be concerned about how things were going to unfold. And those are the kind of times where we're living in right now. There's it's appropriate to be concerned and anxious about that, and to let that concern and anxiety be a basis for wisely responding rather than kind of spinning out, as we can do if we're not practicing, if we're not aware. So I want to particularly look at, the role of the Bodhisattva and how that can support us in these times. As I mentioned a little earlier, I believe we have a priceless gift in the Dharma, in the teachings, to help us respond in these difficult times. The teachings provide us with a training that can allow us to live with peace and equanimity, even in the midst of the most challenging and difficult and painful conditions. In fact, in the midst of everything that unfolds, we have, with the teachings and the practices, we have the tools to be able to say, yes, this is really painful. This is the last thing I would have wanted to happen. And yet we can be with this. We can cultivate and train the mind and the heart to be able to be with the most challenging circumstances. Probably everyone or most of us are familiar with Viktor Frankl's well-known statement, following, his experience in the Auschwitz concentration camps, where he says, well, they could take everything from us, but the last of the human freedoms, the freedom to choose our own way, to choose how we meet our experience. We always have that choice about how we meet our experience. A lot of the time, we don't have a choice about what happens, whether an asteroid does hit the earth, but whatever, whether there's an earthquake or whether it's a political earthquake or whatever it might be, or anything coming up in our lives can come out of left field, can come, unexpectedly. We can't control those circumstances, or at least not all of them. We can have some effect on certain things, but we can choose how we respond. And that really is the freedom that I think is certainly at the heart of the Dharma, the Buddhist teachings and practices, and so many other wisdom traditions. So, we could be tossed around by life's worldly winds. Whatever comes up, we can, oh, this is terrible. Or something happened that's good. Oh, wonderful. Or we can meet what comes up with equanimity, with peace, with acceptance. There's a great the quote from Don Juan, the kind of the spiritual teacher in the Carlos Castaneda books. He says the basic difference between the ordinary person and the warrior, the spiritual warrior, you could say the Bodhisattva, is that the warrior takes everything as a challenge, while an ordinary person takes everything as a blessing or a curse. Everything is a challenge. And as he often talks about, the warrior has to, you meet reality on reality's terms, not on your own terms. There's like, okay, this is not the battlefield. And, again, I don't want to overuse the martial metaphors, but, this spiritually, look at from a spiritual standpoint, we meet our experience where it is, not on, where we want it to be or how we want it to be necessarily, but what is here. And that's really the heart of the Dharma in the broadest sense, beyond the Buddha's Dharma, the truth of life, the truth of where freedom lies. And there's two really central practices at the heart of everything we do here and in similar kind of teachings and classes, etc., meditations. We begin by accepting the truth of our situation. So if we look at the situation in the country right now after November 5th, there's a truth about what what happened. And we might think, many people might think, oh, I wish it were different. I wish it were otherwise. How could this have happened? But if we get caught up in that too much, in that sense of why is it like this? It shouldn't be like this, then we're going to suffer because life is as it is and reality is as it is. So our practice really begins by accepting the truth of our situation. This is how things are. So we're not saying it's right or it's just or it's appropriate or it's right or it's just, certainly, but it's a reality. This is a reality. I've shared before, the Jesuit philosopher and writer Anthony de Mello spoke about enlightenment as absolute cooperation with the inevitable. Freedom is absolute cooperation with the inevitable. And what he's saying there is to cooperate absolutely with what is unavoidable, with what is real, what is here, to not fight with reality. Because if we fight with reality, good luck with that one, because reality will always be reality. What we want, how we want things to be may change and come and go, but we, it doesn't serve us to fight with reality. Really, the practice is, as I shared, is say yes to what is. Doesn't mean we can't change things, but it's a very different thing to try to change things. If we want to resist what we feel are unjust, policies, we can choose to resist it, but we have to start from the place of acceptance that this is what's happening. We can't deny that if we're gonna, unless we want to suffer. So we start from where we are, and then we can say, I don't want to, I'm not going to accept this. We can sit in civil disobedience and whatever, and say, no, this is wrong. I'm going to take my stand here. Any effort to change what is or resist what's unjust or harmful has to begin with acceptance of the truth of what exists now. This is where we are. It's like this. James Baldwin, the great playwright and poet and civil rights activist, he said, not everything that is faced can be changed. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed unless it is faced. Nothing can be changed unless is faced. We have to face the truth of what we're experiencing. We say, this is where we are. That's really the first step, and it's really the first step of the Bodhisattva path, of taking refuge in the truth. This is where we are. This is how things are right now. The second crucial step in responding wisely and compassionately is to open fully and wholeheartedly to what is present moment to moment. As we do in the meditation, if grief is here, to open to that grief. If anger's here, open to it. If fear is here, if joy is here, allow that to come and go. If we can do that, if we can make space for the direct experience of these emotions and mind states, then they don't have to rule us. If we don't bring awareness to them, we get caught up in the story in our mind, and that can take us anywhere. That can take us into catastrophizing, and it's not going to be a pleasant outcome if we just go with whatever, our habitual patterns, may get us caught up in. So we have to pause and bring awareness to our experience and allow what's here to be here, to say yes to what is, not to resist, not to push away or cling, or to avoid any part of our experience. So right now, I think, right now in these times, it's been 4 weeks, almost 4 weeks on Tuesday since the elections. I feel very strongly that we need to take time to fully feel our feelings, to allow ourselves, if we're experiencing grief or sadness or anger, to allow ourselves to feel, to experience what we're experiencing, to not push it under. What it's easy to do is to get caught up in, now I need to do something. So we, in moving straight to doing, we easily bypass what we need to feel. And so our doing comes from a less grounded place than if we really allowed ourselves to fully feel and experience what's here for us. It serves us to allow ourselves, and actually there's time to do it. There's time to prepare, there's time to, and I think, probably many of you familiar with Joe Hill, the trade union organizer and kind of radical in a very good sense of the early part of the 20th century. Was executed for something he didn't do, and before he died, his kind of advice to his colleagues was, don't mourn, organize. Don't mourn, organize. I kind of think that can also be shifted in a helpful way, to say mourn and then organize. I think to bypass the mourning, if mourning is present, is a mistake, and is going to have an impact on the nature of our response. So take time to feel what we're feeling, to allow ourselves to be, to be present with what is. And I guess I'll check in after we finish in a little bit, but how folks are doing. But feel free, if you'd like, to share anything in the chat while I'm talking. So these two practices of accepting the truth of what is and opening fully to our experience is really key to a wise and appropriate response to what's going on for ourselves and in the larger world. When we get caught up in unhelpful responses, so get carried away with fears about what might happen, we get taken away from what's here right now into kind of mind created scenarios. And when that happens, we can just come back, choose to come back, let the thoughts go, come back to the body, come back to the breath. The Buddha's teachings at the heart are to abandon what is unskillful and cultivate the good. To see where we're getting caught up in harmful patterns of thought and action and words, and to let them go. When we see ourselves going in that direction, let them go. Abandon greed, abandon clinging, abandon hatred, blame, harsh judgment, and cultivate the good. Cultivate qualities of heart and mind that lead to well-being and to happiness. Cultivate gratitude, cultivate generosity, cultivate compassion, cultivate loving kindness, equanimity. Or these qualities serve to steady us, open our hearts to ourselves and to others. And they lead to well-being and happiness. So these two qualities, accepting the truth of our experience and opening fully to what's here, are really the first two qualities of a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is, the word bodhisattva comes from two Pali words. Bodhi means awakening, like the Bodhi tree, the tree of the Buddha's awakening, connected with the word, our word for flowering, budding, Bodhi, budding. So Bodhi, awakening, and sattva is a being. So a bodhisattva is an awakening being, or sometimes an awakened being, somebody who is either fully awakened or on the path to awakening, committed to letting go of unskillful behaviors, etc., and cultivating beneficial ones. And the bodhisattva is a powerful archetype in the Buddhist tradition, in Buddhist teachings, that can provide us with a vision of how we can engage with the suffering of the world while healing our own hearts. At the heart of the bodhisattva ideal is intention. The bodhisattva, the being, awakening being, and we could say we're all awakening beings. We're all kind of, whether we know it or not, kind of on that path of awakening. But what I'm talking about in terms of the Bodhisattva path is to consciously take on that intention. And it's the intention of compassion towards all beings everywhere. It's a commitment of the heart to alleviate suffering, our own suffering, the suffering of others, and the suffering of our world. The Bodhisattva vow is often stated in terms that seem like, they're way kind of lofty terms. So here's how one framing of them. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to eradicate them all. The gates of the Dharma are limitless. I vow to enter them all. The Buddha's way is inconceivable. I vow to attain it. And, rather than seeing this as, I'm, this lofty, I'm going to save all beings everywhere, you can see it really more as, or I think it's helpful to see it as really grounding us in the sense of a really deep commitment to compassion for all beings, wanting to alleviate suffering wherever it's found, a commitment to benefit all beings and to act selflessly for the good of others and for the good of all beings. So you can see the archetype of the Bodhisattva as a kind of an ideal, but it's also something that can be and has been put into practice in ways that are very, I find, incredibly inspiring. So, for example, if you think of the Dalai Lama, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and his commitment to compassion for everybody. You think of here the situation of the terrible suffering of the Tibetan people under Chinese domination for the last, 75 years or so, 70, 75 years. And yet the Dalai Lama, his whole approach is at first, every day he practices compassion for the Chinese authorities and people, recognizing that that if he in any way cultivates hatred, then he's going to suffer division, separation, and the unhappiness that comes out of that. So practicing compassion towards everyone, all beings. You think of Thich Nhat Hanh, the great Vietnamese Zen teacher who died about 3 years ago. The incredible example of his life, almost 90 or so years of, working for peace to end the war in Vietnam, and then peace around the world, and setting up monasteries to cultivate mindfulness and compassion. You can see them as real human bodhisattvas. But the bodhisattva ideal, I think, is even broader than Buddhism. I think of people like, I think of Nelson Mandela as a bodhisattva. you know um I I've elsewhere kind of talked about him, Nelson Mandela, as a bodhisattva, but just to say how he, basically, he, when he was put in prison for life, rather than kind of railing at the world that this is so unjust, this is terrible, how could they do this, this is immoral, which it clearly was. But rather than doing that and getting caught up in this shouldn't be like this, he accepted the truth that I'm probably going to die in prison. The likelihood that then time was that he probably would have died in prison if there hadn't been, the various upheaval to try and, bring about change in the society. But he accepted the truth of his situation, and he practiced working on himself, including, it shares, doing about 15 minutes of meditation every day to to cultivate, that kind of some level of equanimity and peace. And out of that acceptance and out of his own inner practices, and he was able to see the humanity in those who were imprisoning him and being inhumane towards him. And he could learn about them, and through that getting to know them, could really see how, really cultivate the seeds of how change on a larger scale could happen in that incredibly unjust apartheid, racial separation society. So he's for me, is a wonderful example of a bodhisattva. You can think of all of those who struggled in the civil rights movement here in the US, so many, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, John Lewis, so many others, some sung and some unsung. And their commitment, particularly King's commitment to the beloved community, that not just as an ideal, and it's really a kind of a bodhisattva ideal, his real belief that we could here in this world, in America, develop the beloved community where, racial injustice and social injustice and inequality would be a thing of the past, that we could learn to love and care for each other as a possibility. This for me is really the ideal of a bodhisattva. I don't, what that was not his framing. The framing of the beloved community was a different framing, but it's very, very much in the same vein as the bodhisattva ideal. So we can think of, this, it's really kind of embodying, taking on in a conscious way an intention of kindness and compassion towards everyone, those who are on the opposite side of the political spectrum, those who believe things are different, those who are doing harm, to include everyone in our field and our circle of compassion. Jack Kornfield, in his book on Buddhist and Western psychology, his book, The Wise Heart, a wonderful book. If you haven't read it, I strongly encourage you to. The Wise Heart. He spoke of 3 fundamental qualities of a bodhisattva. And the first 2 of qualities are the ones I've spoken about: the acceptance of the truth of what's here. This is how things are right now, and working on ourselves, working to transform ourselves by the willingness to be with our experience as it is, to abandon what is unskillful, abandon those qualities that lead to harm and to suffering, and to cultivate the qualities that lead to happiness and well-being. So these are the first two qualities of the Bodhisattva. The third quality of the Bodhisattva, he says, is to envision actions and a path of liberation for herself, the Bodhisattva, herself, her community and world, and to commit to working for those ends. So as well as the acceptance and the self-transformation, the third element of the Bodhisattva is this envisioning. How can I help build, in King's terms of the beloved community, or in the Bodhisattva terms, how can I help alleviate suffering in my life, in my family, in my community, in my society, in the larger world? And it's not any particular thing. It doesn't say you got to go out and get arrested, or you've got to organize from morning till night, or you've got to, pressure Congress, or you've got to do this, or you've got to do that. Everything depends on context. And where we can start is, where is my heart? If I commit myself to the Bodhisattva path, to the path of healing and alleviating suffering for all beings, what is it in my world, in my range of possibilities, where I can be most helpful? How can I serve? How can I serve to help alleviate suffering? And it may be just on an interpersonal level. It may be by giving or donating. It might be in our work if we're a therapist or a teacher or in some other role, a social worker. It might be mainly through that. For some, it may be more in a kind of an organized way, getting together with other people and saying, no, we're not going to just sit by while millions of immigrants are rounded up and put in camps and deported. We're going to, clog up the works to do that. That may be the expression, but it won't be for everyone. So it's really how am I, what am I drawn towards? How can I most serve? How can I be of most help in alleviating suffering? Jack Cornfield says this. He says, envisioning has enormous power. With our vision and imagination, we can help create the future. Envisioning sets our direction, marshals our resources, makes the unmanifest possible. So having that vision, it doesn't have to be a vision for the whole country. It could be a vision for ourselves for what I can do. But if you look at, Mandela in prison, his vision was was a multiracial egalitarian society, and that certainly there's been movement in that direction. Martin Luther King's was the beloved community, a community where all beings, everyone, he spoke about in the March on Washington, where people are judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, and how, we could live together in a caring, compassionate way. So that sense of envisioning, you have to have that vision in order to create something, in order to build something, in order to, to do anything really, to go to the moon or to, discover something. You have to have the vision. What do I want to do? And it can be, it doesn't matter what size that vision is, whether it's a global one or a much more interpersonal one. Personally, for a long, long time, I've been very, very taken with the Bodhisattva ideal archetype. But I found, particularly in the last 4 weeks, I found really taking on that commitment, of of having the intention of compassion and alleviating suffering without difference, that includes everyone, that isn't like our side has to win, therefore we have to defeat the other side. Not having that as the model or the paradigm, but including all beings. Because if we don't include all beings, if everyone isn't in the solution, then the conflict is going to just keep continuing. It's just going to keep going round and round and round. There's some wonderful quote from Alexander Solzhenitsyn. He says, if only it were all so simple, if only there were evil people somewhere else, insidiously committing evil deeds, and it was simply necessary to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being, and who is willing to destroy a piece of their own heart? So it's within each of us. And so having that intention of compassion, alleviating suffering, for me has made this period, I don't say easy, but has given a frame for this period that takes it outside of my own more individual fears, and takes it to, okay, this is where the struggle is. It's not a struggle to defeat them, but it's a struggle to move towards the beloved community, a caring, compassionate world that we really all want to see. That there's, having that Bodhisattva ideal, that view, I find is enormously helpful. It kind of takes me out of that that limited sense of a small self into this larger sense of, yes, if then there isn't winning or losing. There isn't the sense of the fear that can come up, like, oh, what if it all goes wrong? What if bad things happen to me? It's like it's a much larger vision of what needs to happen. And it has to be, it's grounded in both. I'm conscious of the time, and I want to just finish in the next couple of minutes, but I just want to point to the two fundamental grounds of the Bodhisattva ideal or archetype are wisdom and compassion. And the wisdom is really on which the compassion is based, is to see that we're no different from anybody else. I mean, we're all different and unique in our own ways, but as in Christian terms, you might say there's no fundamental difference between the greatest saint and the worst sinner, or in Buddhist terms, between a bodhisattva and somebody who's doing great harm. The only fundamental difference is that one has found a path and has trained the heart and the mind, and the other hasn't found it or hasn't yet found that path. And so the difference, yes, there are people doing harm, but that harm is coming from their own suffering. And that's not to excuse harmful behavior. We're all responsible for our actions. And yet, if we really understand that the difference is between, you could put it in Buddhist language, between grace and karma on one hand, just having the grace to have found the teachings and practices, or the karma maybe from our own actions in the past to be able to have found these teachings and practices, or other skillful teachings and practices that lead to freedom. That's really the difference. And those who are committing harm are just caught up in that cycle of confusion and greed and hatred, not because they're fundamentally bad, but because they haven't found the way. And that's really and it's on that understanding, and maybe I can improve that language a little bit, but that's the basis of wisdom from which the compassion flows. That if that's the case, then nobody should be left out of our compassion. Nobody should be left out of our wishes to alleviate suffering. So the Bodhisattva, I was reflecting on the Bodhisattva path and commitment. What it helps to do is to coalesce our deepest intentions, to kind of bring them together. It anchors us in our deepest values, what's really most important for us. For me, the most important thing is freedom of the heart, finding freedom from suffering in this life. And to help, and the Bodhisattva path helps us organize ourselves around our values and our intentions. And as I said earlier, it may be expressed in a million different ways, but the main thing is to be grounded in that understanding that everybody needs to be included, and to wish for the well-being of all, and to alleviate the suffering of all beings. So I'll stop here, and maybe if those who would like to stay just a couple of minutes longer, just to be able to, maybe I'm happy to stay a little bit longer if folks would like to. I'd love to continue this conversation. And I guess, in this last few minutes, maybe firstly, just invite you just to share in the chat how you are doing, how you are feeling, what's present for you, over this time, and acknowledging, people are coming from very different places and experiencing very different things. How are you doing? How is your heart? How is your mind right now? Is it, have you found some peace in this time, or has it been a time of struggle? I'd love to hear from, whatever anyone would like to share.